Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Welcome to my show. It's been said you can see how well a city is doing by looking up and looking at the cranes, not the cranes, the birds, the cranes that are building new buildings. And Dallas is home to a lot of new buildings, but sometimes they have to get rid of the old buildings. And to talk about that is Kathryn O'Gorman. She's with ESE Partners. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Okay, so a lot of people don't think about this, but when you guys go into an area that you're finding, say, an old school or an old warehouse, that the standards back then were different, and so environmentally you have to be very careful.
Yes, that's right. A lot of times developers want to start fresh, and there's a lot of regulation and liability protection that needs to be thought of during that due diligence period when thinking about siting a new location.
That's awesome. So they get in touch with you guys, and we're going to roll some video from your website. I was just amazed at how widespread. I mean, you're taking on projects of all shapes and sizes, aren't you?
Absolutely. Anything from a small corner gas station to large-scale industrial facilities.
Wow. And you've been with the company for 10 years now.
Yes, and loving every minute of it.
That's really cool. These days you don't see people stay with one company for that long, which says it's a great company to work for. So let's talk about, hypothetically, somebody, like you mentioned, an old gas station. If somebody came in and they loved that corner, they had to get rid of the gas station, well, that evokes a lot of ideas about, the tanks in the ground, and that's where you guys come in.
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of financial institutions or private financing will require some level of environmental assessment before they fund a project like that. And to kind of protect themselves from exposure to liabilities, they oftentimes will need to look into the environmental liability. And especially at gas stations or dry cleaners, facilities like that, you definitely need to just take a look at what's under the hood, a little research, to see what your exposure might be.
We're going to go back to your website because there's a page which I was fascinated to look at all of these different projects that you guys have worked on and are working on, and everything from mold remediation. I think about what happened after Katrina and Hurricane Harvey. I mean, there's a lot of damaged buildings.
Yes, absolutely, and it's important for human health to protect your tenants and get those properly assessed and cleaned up.
Yes, and I'm interested to get your opinion on the Leaning Tower of Dallas. I'm sure you watched that.
I did. Yes, that was a debacle, but
really
I'm glad it's finally over.
And I'm glad that your company had nothing to do with that. We're just going on record.
But man, that engineer that constructed it, wow.
That's a tough building right there. What's your favorite project that you worked on so far?
Oh, I have to say my personal favorite was I was working for a multifamily developer and owner of many apartment complexes, and they were purchasing an existing high-end apartment complex in a city center area. And in doing their acquisition due diligence, I was researching the potential for environmental impacts from on-site or adjoining properties, and I came across immediately adjoining a nasty contamination situation that had been partially cleaned up through the state, but there were some gaps, and I found those gaps, and I brought it to their attention, and we suggested doing some indoor air sampling, and sure enough, there were carcinogenic vapors in the occupied units that were not safe for occupancy. So they negotiated with the seller. put in a mitigation system, and now it's safe for occupancy.
That's cool. That's kind of like CSI, isn't it?
It's really nice knowing that I'm helping to protect families in that sense.
That's awesome. Well, you've been a great guest. We're going to put your website up. It's esepartners.com. And Kathryn, you've been an amazing guest. I hope you'll come back again.
Oh, thanks so much, Jeff.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.